Good morning and welcome back, or welcome to the NNP Symposium as well as Central States. We are sponsored by EPNIS, the Eric P. Newman Numismatic Education Society. As I expect you all know by now, we've been doing this since 2020. So for this presentation, this is part of our Focus on Franklin series. So we have our feature video about Franklin and numismatics, focusing on his different contributions to the field. Our feature video series we've been doing for a few years now. They have won multiple NLG awards for video production, so we're excited to premiere this one. And that should get us started. After the video, we'll have a Q&A with Benjamin Franklin himself, so be sure to stick around for that. If you are online, you can send in questions with the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll take those after the video, and we'll be taking questions from within the room as well. So thank you. And give me just a second, I'll get the video queued up and we'll get started.
Benjamin Franklin, American statesman, scientist, and entrepreneur, is today recognized by even casual numismatists through his longtime depiction on American medals, coins, and currency. Franklin, however, was more than a founding father worthy of commemoration on our current money. Indeed, Franklin was directly involved in the creation of paper money and coinage of early America, and in this video, we will explore Franklin's connections to our earliest numismatics. Franklin's early years are well known. He was born in Boston in 1706, had only 2 years of formal schooling, and served as a printer's apprentice to his brother James, beginning at the age of 12. James Franklin founded the New England Courant, an early Boston newspaper, in 1721. Denied the chance to write for the paper, Benjamin, unbeknownst to his brother, created the character Silence Dogood and began submitting anonymous pieces to the Courant, which were duly published. James was none too pleased when the ruse came to light, and in 1723, the teenaged Benjamin left the city for Philadelphia, where he found work in the printing trade. By 1729, Franklin acquired the Pennsylvania Gazette, which, under his direction, became one of the most important newspapers in the American colonies. The first edition of Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanac appeared soon thereafter, and, by the age of 26, Franklin had established an influential media platform within the colonies. Franklin first weighed in on the use of paper money in a 1729 pamphlet, A Modest Inquiry into the Nature and Necessity of a Paper Currency. Gold and silver were hard to come by in colonial America, as there was little local production of precious metals, while Britain demanded hard money in return for manufactured goods. Franklin argued for a paper money issue backed by local real estate. In this system, landowners effectively mortgaged their property in return for paper money from the state, which then served as a medium of exchange to facilitate the economy. The legislation passed in the Assembly, and while Franklin did not win the printing contract for the 1729 paper money issue, he was awarded the contract for the subsequent 1731 currency emission. Franklin continued to print Pennsylvania paper money for the next 33 years, and additionally printed currency for nearby Delaware and New Jersey. His total output during this period was over 2.5 million notes. Although colonial paper money remains crude by today's standards, Franklin introduced an important technological innovation in the production of currency. Anti-counterfeiting was the primary concern, and Franklin's contribution in this area was the incorporation of nature printing on American paper money. Nature prints are unique and depict specific leaf and vein detail, making them difficult to copy. The challenge to Franklin was how to reproduce, thousands of times in print, the image of a leaf. In 1964, Eric P. Newman explained the process in the pages of The Numismatist. Newman proposed that Franklin pressed a leaf into plaster and then poured molten tight metal into the negative image to form a printing block. Ordinary plaster could not accept hot metal, and Newman theorized that Franklin first mixed asbestos or powdered brick into the plaster to make it more durable. Franklin himself never publicized his method, which constituted a trade secret useful for procuring additional business. A common fraud related to early paper money involved raising a note or altering it so that it indicated a higher value. Franklin countered this by introducing misspellings that paired with specific denominations. Note the alternate spellings of Pennsylvania on the 1 shilling and 5 shilling notes of October 1st, 1755. Additional anti-counterfeiting measures included the use of multiple fonts and ornamental devices within the note design. Franklin is also associated with the use of marbled paper in our early paper money. One of the most popular issues among collectors is the May 10, 1775 $20 Continental currency emission. This note is tied to Franklin in several ways, as he furnished the face emblem and mottos for the issue. The most striking aspect is the use of marbled paper, which Franklin himself supplied to the Continental Congress. The rich polychromate design served as an anti-counterfeiting measure, and today creates substantial collector appeal, with examples routinely trading in the low 5-figure range. The marbled edge device appears again on the Bank of North America August 6, 1789 3-pence note. This issue has two connections to Franklin, as he supplied the paper for the notes, which were printed by his grandson, Benjamin Franklin Bache. While not inexpensive, these notes are more accessible to collectors than the marbled edge Continental currency $20 notes. In addition to nature printing and other innovations, recent research at Notre Dame by Kachatur Manoukian and others suggests that Franklin developed a unique graphite-based black ink for printing paper money, used indigo-colored fibers in his paper stock, and incorporated white mica fillers into the paper pulp. Clearly, Franklin was closely involved with all aspects of the paper, ink, and design of the paper money that he produced. As with the production of modern paper money, security is all important, and the related technology is well guarded. However, modern scholarship has been able to expose a few bits of Franklin's genius in this regard. Franklin was active in the selection of mottos for American coins and paper money. In correspondence with Edward Bridgen in 1779, he explained the power of a circulating medium to create teachable moments. Seeing it every time one receives a piece of money, Franklin said, might make an impression upon the mind, especially of young persons, and tend to regulate the conduct. In the same letter, Franklin suggested phrases such as, "A penny saved is a penny got," or "Keep thy shop and thy shop will keep thee." Franklin's best-known numismatic work is the Fugio cent, for which he supplied the design and mottos. This type, sometimes referred to as the Franklin cent, was authorized under the authority of the Confederation Congress in 1787, and is arguably the first American coin. Approximately 60 die varieties are known, and these are popular with today's collectors. The obverse bears the inscription Fugio, or Time Flies, along with the aphorism, Mind Your Business. The addition of a sundial reinforces the idea of passing time. The reverse features a set of interlocking rings representing American unity, along with the motto, We Are One. The overall design of the coin matches what Franklin proposed earlier in 1779, one side conveying a moral message, while the other was nationalistic in nature. Given Franklin's background in printing paper money, it was no surprise that in June of 1775, the Continental Congress appointed Franklin to a committee to oversee the production of the Continental currency. Sketches in the Franklin papers dating to the same period indicate his conception of design elements for the currency. The reverse of the May 10, 1775 $30 note depicts the wind creating waves, along with the motto, Vui concitate, or driven by force. Similarly, a sketch of the famous ring design also appears in the Franklin papers, and was used on fractional denominations of the February 17, 1776 paper money issue. Franklin also contributed mottos to the paper money issues authorized by the Continental Congress. These mottos appeared in Latin, although this did not reflect a widespread fluency in the dead language. Indeed, contemporary newspapers and almanacs translated these phrases for a general audience. In 1966, Eric Newman learned that Franklin's principal source for the Continental currency was a series of emblem and motto books created by Joaquin Camerarius in the 16th century. Typical is this $3 continental currency issue of November 1775. Exitus in dubio est is translated, "The outcome is in doubt," a call to continued vigilance set against the image of two warring birds. The original cut from the Camerarius emblem book reveals the obvious adaptation by the engraver of the continental currency. In addition to coins and currency, Franklin acted as a designer of America's most famous metal, the Libertas Americana. Franklin outlined his ideas for the metal in a letter to Robert Livingston in March of 1782. In the letter, Franklin envisioned America as the infant Hercules and France as Minerva the Protector, while the infant battles a pair of snakes. The final form of the metal symbolized Britain as a leopard, which Minerva defends against with a fleur-de-lis covered shield. The obverse of the metal, while not credited to Franklin, is no less striking, as the figure of Liberty faces west, adorned by a freedom cap to the right. The Paris Mint produced the Libertas Americana medal, while Franklin distributed examples to international dignitaries and diplomats. Whitman's 100 Greatest American Medals and Tokens ranks the Libertas as the most popular American medal, and examples are competitively pursued as they appear in the market. The Paris Mint today continues to produce restrikes in various formats, and these too have drawn their own collector following. Since Franklin's passing in 1790, a host of Franklin-themed medals have been created to honor this early American statesman. This Franklin Beaver medal, first struck at the U.S. Mint in 1807, was engraved by John Reich and features a beaver on the reverse. The beaver is a symbol of industry adapted from the continental currency, as depicted on this May 9, 1776 $6 note. The motto, Perseverando, meaning by perseverance, was almost certainly supplied by Franklin via the Camerarius emblem book. Another popular Franklin piece is the award medal of the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, engraved by Christian Gobrecht after a portrait by Thomas Sully in 1825. Founded in 1824, the Franklin Institute periodically issued these medals in recognition of achievements in science and industry. The Franklin Medal series is extensive, with hundreds of examples cataloged in the standard reference, Phil Greenslet's The Medals of Franklin, published by the Token and Medal Society in 1993. Today, Franklin's strongest numismatic connection is his depiction on the $100 bill. Franklin first appeared on the series of 1928 and remains on the face of the note almost a century later. These bills have evolved over time with the addition of anti-counterfeiting measures, something Franklin would have well appreciated. Features on today's currency include microprinting, watermarks, and color shifting as the note is tilted. Notice, for example, how the Liberty Bell appears when viewed from a different angle. These bills also feature raised printing, which can be felt with the touch. Franklin himself incorporated anti-counterfeiting measures that were not understood until exposed by modern technology, and it's certain that today's $100 notes are similarly manufactured with trade secret processes. Older collectors will recall seeing Franklin half dollars in everyday circulation, struck from 1948 to 1963. The coin seems to have been the pet project of Mint director Nellie Taylor Ross and was not tied to a specific anniversary or historical event. Franklin was the first non-president to appear on a U.S. coin, succeeding Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Franklin Roosevelt. In recent years, attractively toned examples have become popular among collectors, such as this cameo-proof piece sold by Heritage Auctions in 2020. Following a short-lived production run, the Franklin design was replaced by the Kennedy half dollar in 1964. While Franklin's numismatic accomplishments are substantial, he exerted a greater impact on American culture through the publication of Poor Richard's Almanac, which appeared yearly from 1732 to 1758. The Poor Richard character became famous for pithy advice related to clean living, industrious behavior, and financial economy. Poor Richard quotes related to money include, "Great spenders are bad lenders," "A light purse is a heavy curse," and "If you'd know the value of money, go and borrow some." The almanac was a perennial bestseller, as Franklin's aphorisms greatly resonated with the young country. After exiting the printing business, Franklin's life became increasingly dominated by politics, and he would play a critical role in the Revolution as the ambassador to France. Still, of all the founding fathers, Franklin remains the one closest to the numismatic events of the day, given his multifaceted involvement in the production of paper money, coins, and medals.
All right, let me get this screen share stopped. There we go. Okay. Then we're going to have Len Oxberger run the Q&A. If you're online, just send them in with the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. If you're in the room, raise your hand and we'll alternate between the two. So, Len, I'll let you take it away. And Pat McBride is going to come up. He's a Franklin reenactor. If you've been to any major shows, you've probably seen him. So,
I'm easy to spot. Well, I'll be polite and remove my tri-corner since we're in a room here, and sure, I'll be glad to answer any questions. It doesn't mean that I'll answer them correctly, but it'll certainly be a memorable answer. I can guarantee that. So if you have anything, Leanna, or anybody in the room is welcome to ask something. Yes.
Okay, we have one from online. Are there any reported instances of Libertas Americanas being presented to American Indian chiefs?
Oh, that is a wonderful question that I don't know the answer to that. That would seem that I wouldn't have any aversion to that happening. My time with the Indians, and as some refer to as the savages, if I'm remembering back to General Braddock and my encounter with him. But I don't know of any instance, and that is a good question, and I don't think there were, but I think as they made their way to this our country, they were mostly to the dignitaries and assembly members and so forth, and the silver ones being it's based on rank. There were two golds, I think, that were King Louis and Marie's, but they've never been found, and I'm guessing that they were probably destroyed, but no, to answer that question, I'm not sure.
So there was a tremendous amount of correspondence in your papers about presentation pieces made to dignitaries in Europe. A lot of that was published in a book about 15 or 20 years ago. The author's name escapes me right now, but it was very well documented at the time. And it seems to me if Franklin presented a piece to any of the Indians, there would have been something in the papers.
Yeah, and I don't recall that I did that. So yeah, and there was the wars in the frontier were ongoing through the history of our country, and so that was always a touchy subject. But that's for another day, and that'd be lovely to talk about. Any other questions? Maybe the room, or here's one from the room.
What were your earliest impressions of a young Lafayette?
Oh, a young Lafayette. Yes. Now, here, my time in France. Well, I'll relay a story. I'll try to keep it short. I have to be cognizant of time here, but Len and Leanna will let me know. When I was in Passy, and I often had visits from every French military officer that wanted to come to America and join in the fight. I mean, what we really needed were gunpowder, clothing, uniform supplies. We didn't need French officers, but you have to understand that in France, as the families of the aristocracy, these young men came to me, and in their homes, and they often lived in estates. Lafayette came from a very wealthy family and distinguished family, and there's pictures of military grandfathers and fathers and everything. And for these young lads to move up that status, you better get involved in a war somewhere, and there were none going on at the time in France. So I would hear this clippity clop coming up the roadway to where I was staying in Passy, and I wanted to hide under the bed. Please don't answer the door. I can't take another one. And they said, well, Dr. Franklin, your carriage is sitting there. They know you're in here. So yes, I did meet with Lafayette. He did have an impression on me. And so I did write a letter to General Washington on his behalf, which I wrote other letters as well. And so I said that he would, he'd be advised to meet with him, and the letter of introduction was a very important thing in the 18th century, and so yes, I did do that, and I just saw something in him, the passion, and maybe my motives are a little different too. I'm not worried about Lafayette's advancement in life as I'm worried about getting the French sucked into our war. And so I thought that's one means to get some of influential families involved with already into the fight before they would finally agree to a treaty of alliance, and then getting more of what we needed. There were already clandestine things going on. I was a gun runner and all sorts of things while I was in Paris, and gunpowder down to the West Indies that snuck up the coast and offloaded before the British could see where it was coming from. But yes, to answer your question, anybody else?
Have another one from online. Mr. Franklin, you spent quite a few years in Europe. Did you have any numismatic encounters during that time?
Oh, yes. So, so my numismatic encounters, and one, it was very fun for me that going back to Paris, and we talked about in Leanna's wonderful video, the Libertas Americana medal. But I'll mention one other thing, and let me go over to my little table here and take hold of something that's here we go. Let's do this one. This numismatic item involved my marten fur cap, and for those that aren't sure, a marten is a small animal about the size of a weasel. And I was given this in I think in my trip to Albany, and this wonderful. It covered up my bald head and the all the pockings and skin marks that I had, and I thought it quite appropriate that it was beautifully kept this old bald head warm in the winter, especially in travel in the 18th century. Now, of course, when I was on my way across the sea in that late fall of '76, on my way to Paris, I wore my fur cap, and when I am debarked off that rather rough ride, just shy of Paris, we landed. I wore this as we made our way to shore. Well, it was wildly popular, and Monsieur Nini, he was the potter and the porcelain maker for my landlord, and he made images of me on terracotta medallions, which I probably have some images, but they were popular, and I never met him though. He lived 125 miles south in the chateau while I was in Passy, but I certainly saw his impressions, and he took them from a sketch that was made of me, and did a wonderful job. So I had more ordered and made, and wanted them shipped back to America. They were lost at sea, so those medallions were one of the interesting things for me. Some other things. I must say the engravers at the time, and my interest in the printing and my own engraving. I have to say, when I was going back when I was a young boy in London, my first trip there under rather cruel circumstances, but I did go to London to bring back the materials I needed to open up my print shop, and then I found out my letter of credit was no good, so I remained there working under some of the most magnificent printing houses in London at the time of Samuel Palmer and James Watt, and I learned a lot of my engraving skills, which in Leanna's video, my leaf impressions were and how they were made in the plaster, and made them as molds for those, and then my skill with copperplate engraving, woodcut engraving of all those nature images that you often see. Now, I won't go on and on because I have a tendency to do that. If anybody has a question, and if you don't, I will go on and on. If there's anything online or further, yes, Mark has a question.
The Fugio set.
Yeah.
The phrase "mind your business."
Yes.
People look at that today and might interpret that as meaning, don't be concerned about what I'm doing, be concerned about what you're doing. What was your interpretation of that phrase in the 1780s?
Well, rest assured, we had a lot of busybodies in that time frame. So there was no shortage of them, but mine tying it in with time, and to keep a good accounting of your affairs, whether you're a merchant or whatever your endeavor is, so this was all based on that, where you watch the pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves, and all these sorts of things. So that was my idea for that, mind your business. And I will tell you a slight sidebar to mind your business. Really, I was a disaster. Debbie minded my business, my wife. She kept great records in our print shop, and my postal commission, she kept the records of the postal records. You just didn't buy stamps and put them on the envelope. You kept it in count, and so that count would have to be rectified. Debbie kept track of all that. I was so much distracted by so many pragmatic things that I saw everywhere. But yes, mind your business meant in that regard. So okay, good. Anything else? I mean, it's only 318 years that I have to recall my memory, but I'm trying here. Let's see. Yes, Leanna.
Is there any specific literature that you would recommend for more information about your numismatic endeavors?
Oh, numismatically. I have to say that for the Nini mention about the terracotta, you have to buy the Richard Margolis book, and it's out of print, so it's expensive. But that is just a fascinating. It's a big, large folio volume that.
Pretty sure Colby and Fanning have them in stock.
Oh, do they have them in stock? Yeah, it was published by Colby and Fanning. So yes, buy that. I'll autograph it if you bring it to me. And that covers the porcelain medals or the terracottas. I'm thinking of the the other numismatic books out there, you know, the 100 greatest medals for the Libertas Americana. For my general life, though, I think that Walter Isaacson's book on my life is a great read, and he does such a wonderful job of going into the details of my life. The earlier book, the Van Doren book, is very long, very detailed. But for the average reader and holding interest in, you know, the foibles of my life, I mean, everybody has their own. I don't know why they're so interested in mine, but that's a good read. Also, that makes some references to colonial money and my printing of it and so forth. And then with the Farley Grubb's presentation earlier, I don't have his book yet, but I'm going to order it. But it's just out. Yes, ma'am.
I know, I understand in early America, there was a debate as to which bird should be our national symbol, the eagle or the turkey. And I understand you were a fan of the turkey.
I am a turkey fan. Is that a sports team today? Are the turkeys out there? I part of me for the turkey, and as I describe, I think that's true. But that came from a letter to Sally, my daughter, Sally Bache, and so a little bit of it was a folly in a writing as well. I think, yes, the turkey is a much more respectable bird. The eagle is more of a scavenger. But yeah, I think we were all right with adopting the eagle. Like it was mentioned in some of our earlier talks, you know, not everybody agreed with everything I said. So I'm recalling from memory that a lot of my positions were turned down, as it were, but I think we did all right with our eagle, and it presents well, and I can print an eagle and sell newspapers just as fast as I can print a turkey. So yes, but I'm under no movement to change that. Let's put it that way. Anything else? Yes, sir.
You're a remarkable scientist. And most great scientists have mentors.
Oh, yes, yes.
So I think in Rihanna's presentation, you had 2 years of formal education.
Yes, I only had two. There was my father sent me to school when I was 8 years old. But he had to pay for school. I was one of 17 children, so you know, it's not like my father was Mr. Moneybags here. You know, we came from a family of middlings, we called the middle class, the working people. My father was well educated, and I could tie into some of the talks we talked about counterfeiting and paper money and fibers in the and dyes. See, my father was and my uncle Benjamin, who lived with us. My father and mother would say mooched off of us for a number of years doing nothing. But anyhow, they were both educated in London as apprenticeships as silk dyers. So they knew a lot about ink and dye and just the nature of this. And growing up in this large family and having this influence in my, I learned a lot from them. And some of that is in evidence that I could talk about later in a talk, and I would demonstrate that and how that incorporated into colonial paper money, my anti-counterfeit techniques, and so forth. So a lot of this things that I just knew from my family. I'm credited polymath or scientific experiments at discovering or identifying the Gulf Stream. Well, my mother was a Folger from the Bay Colony up in Massachusetts, Nantucket to be precise, and her cousins were whalers. So they knew the nature of the whales and where the feeding ground was for this warm kelp and stuff that was so rich in nourishment. And I thought, well, why is that? But I did notice my journeys going back and forth across the sea, it's faster one way than the other, and why that was puzzling to me. So my cousins up in Nantucket told me about the fishing grounds. They didn't tell everybody this. Like any good fisherman, you never reveal your spot. So it was the same there. And then I learned from them to get that started my curiosity. Everything in me is based on curiosity. And going back to just my 2 years, it never stopped there. I read. I never knew a time when I didn't know how to read. My Uncle Benjamin taught me a lot about reading and taught me a sort of a shorthand for my sermons, that they all wanted me to be a minister or a reverend for my living. And so they had a whole plan laid out about that, and y'all see how that turned out. But yes, my education was rather profound in the environment I was in. I almost met Sir Isaac Newton. That was one of my goals in London, and there was arrangements for that. But Newton was very, very old, and it never happened. But I would have been delighted. But there were certainly other polymaths. I have to think about how the heck did I get here today in this modern world with, oh, thank God for all this electricity. I'm just delighted about all that. I mean, I couldn't think of anything to do but other than electrocute a turkey, thinking the meat would taste better. But you know, as Leanna's video said, I died in 1790. I was 84 years old. I was questioned about, you know, and that I'm close to death. What do you believe? I didn't pay a lot of attention to the metaphysical world. So, but, you know, when I did die and my existence here changed, and I'm floating up there in that nether world, I ran into a couple of my polymaths, that one stone fellow, that German, what's his name, Einstein, and he had to be talking with another Brit, that Hawking fellow, and they were talking about wormholes, time, space continuums, and I asked to join in, and then pow, I ended up here. So I don't know how any of that happened, to tell you the truth, but I'm glad I'm in your future and delighted and impressed. I'm madly impressed with how things are, but we're getting off of the numismatic topic. So if we want to get back to that, or even another question's fine. I should watch my time here.
We don't have any others online right now.
Okay, good.
So
That's fine.
Another question here. The support of France in the Revolutionary War was, you know, absolutely crucial. Can you
Yes.
talk about some of the challenges in developing that relationship, and how you know you were able to win support in France?
Oh, yes, that's just a fascinating story about my time in France. And you know, I went over as I'm called America's first diplomat. Well, I certainly had negotiating experience, but within our colony and across the colonies. But my arrival in France was a whole different world. And I approached. I'll give you a good story that I learned in the assembly, in the Pennsylvania Assembly, and Independence Hall, of course, I knew as our state house, which I really grew up in. One of the assemblymen hated me with a passion, that everything I ever suggested, he was against it. And here's how I dealt with something like that. This is an adversary. This is trying to persuade. I knew he had a very comprehensive library. In the 18th century, that's a bit of a rarity. Books were very expensive. I would print them, they would be printed and stacked, and then you had to take them to a bindery and have them bound, and all the facets of getting a printed book. And I often borrowed books and returned them rather quickly within days. And I knew this fellow had I can't remember the edition, but it was something that had just come out. And I mentioned to him after one of our contentious assembly meetings, and his hatred and venom was spewing my direction. I says, "Oh, I understand you got the new copy of such and such a book." "Oh, yes, I do." And they sort of brag about things that they have and you don't. And I says, "I would love to come by your library and just have a look. And if you would be so kind, I'd like to just borrow it for a day or two to read the book and return it." And he said, "Oh, whoa, no. Oh, so you're interested in my library?" "Oh, yes." And so I visited his home, borrowed that book, read it, went back, met with him with the Madeira. We discussed and critiqued. Now, all of a sudden, in the assembly house, in the conduction of business, oh, I had a supporter. It's not that I was so great at arguing and punishing somebody's point of view, but I was able to, my methods were able to engage people in a way that maybe they could consider what I'm saying. It was sort of my reading of everything in history, from the Socrates, the Socratic method of dealing with people. So I incorporate a lot of that from the classics in my engagement with folks. I knew human nature, and I knew how it didn't work. So I used methods that would maybe transcend the standard method of throwing a fit and screaming at somebody. So it worked, and it worked in France. It worked. My cap, this fur cap, this won America because the ladies loved it. Now why? Because I was such a magnificent heartthrob of a ladies' man? No, they were fascinated with the odd look of this peculiar fellow that discovered the nature of electricity, not electricity. But I wasn't going to argue with them. So the ladies, they were married to these ministers and these prominent people. This got me inroads to meeting with them before I would ever get to Versailles. But I saw I had to have a pathway here to get this support. You know, Mr. Adams and I differed on that quite, and his lovely wife Abigail. She certainly wasn't fond of my methods, but they were effective in France. You know, early to bed, early to rise did not work in Versailles. It's like nobody woke up before noon. Nobody went to bed until the sun started rising the next day. So to pound on the door at Versailles, demanding into a government office at 7 or 8 a.m. in any morning was ineffective. And the quickest way to failure while in France, Mr. Adams and I didn't quite see it the same way, but and not to disparage John, he went on to Holland and got us huge amounts of money. I mean, with the Dutch, and he was quite effective and truly dedicated to the cause. But we had an odd relationship, let's put it that way. Okay, anything else by anybody? Yes.
Just, as a Virginian, I know
yes.
Thomas Jefferson loved the French too.
Yes.
What kind of relationship did you have with Jefferson?
Wonderful relationship, wonderful. Thomas and I had a wonderful relationship. You must understand too, in colonial America, these fellows are other, as we call them, our founding fathers, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. Most of them were half my age. They were maybe the son of same age as my son William Franklin, and so I was more of the old sage type, but I was not aloof enough to be separated from that. I had these youngish, boyish tendencies too, so I had a good intermingling with our young patriots, and they were very young ages. Thomas Paine, 28 years old. Common sense has just turned the country around. I mean, these people were I could engage with quite easily, and they liked engaging with me as well in the tavern. Yes, anything else out there in here, or the netherworld of electricity, or whatever this is, and this contraption? I think I'm gonna take this home and experiment a little. Maybe I can make some improvements. So no, I'm delighted that you're here. For those that are in the audience, I did bring I have some things over here. Oh, I did bring I have an artifact. This is an actual key from the 1700s. This is a real one, made by a blacksmith. Set some stuff up on the table. But here's what I did bring. This was, and I usually do this at the beginning when I talk, just so I could keep everyone's attention. But you know, everybody likes money. I got a whole stack of it here, and you're welcome to one of these. And I'll sign the back of the note, has in my image, which we talked about with Leanna's video, wonderful engraving of, well, look at that handsome fellow. And then on the back side, of course, is our Assembly House, Independence Hall. So I would gladly sign a note with my quill pen if you would want one before you leave, and I'll do that. And if anybody has more questions, I'll be at the tavern, which is located at the Pennsylvania Association of Numismatists on the show floor of this Central States Coin Show at address. It's not Craven Street what is the address? Oh, 113, aisle 113. It's on Aisle Street downstairs at 113. And I'll have an ale and we can talk things over at the tavern. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
We do have one more question that's come in online.
Yes, we can answer that.
My wife is a descendant of Robert Livingston, with whom you served on the drafting committee of the Declaration.
Yes.
A letter from you to him was mentioned in the video presentation. Do you happen to remember any particular encounters with Livingston?
I think I wrote the letter, that was the Libertas Medal, and my ideas for it, I wrote Robert Livingston. Yes, I remember that letter. Oh, I'm so glad you're related. Finally, I have a connection. I was going to ask if anybody was here who was born before 1790, but I didn't think I'd get too many hands up. But yes, good on you for tracing back your history. I had a wonderful relationship with Robert Livingston, and we talked about the Libertas Americana Medal. If I might mention about that, when I wrote Livingston, I said to him that I envisioned Minerva as represented of France with the helmet on, and then her drape would have an occasional fleur-de-lis on it. Well, if you see the medal, how it ended up, she's holding a shield with the fleur-de-lis on it, not on her robe. and then the animal that is attacking little baby America holding the snakes, if you see it pouncing up at the shield, look at the tail. It's curled under. The original Dupre's sketches, what he and I talked about it, he had that same image with the tail up, and as we all, anybody that lives on a farm, the male species its gender is clearly identified. So let's put it that way. And so there were things showing there, and I looked at that and said to dear Augustine, I says, I think it would be better. I'm inclined to curl that tail under to cover that, because I didn't want Britannia to misinterpret their strength by, so I thought a curled tail covering you know what would be much more conducive to creating an appropriate medal. So and I talked that over with Livingston too. So yes, no, I was wonderful thinking about that, encounters about some of our currency and medals, the designs on the continental currency, so symbolic. I wish I had time. They had an Irish harp on there that you might remember one of the images earlier today, and the harp, that strong wood of the holding the strings. I drew that with 13 strings, one represented each colony, but those strings are all in different lengths because our colonies were so different, and so different populations of different commerce and engagement, from the planters to the merchants. And those strings are strung on this strong harp, which is our federal government, and it houses these strings of perfect harmony. And together they create this most wonderful music, and that imagery was in one of the continental currencies. A little later, when we started seeing what was going on. One of the earliest Farley Grubb said emissions was the two birds, the eagle and the heron in battle. And the Latin motto was the outcome is in doubt, and it was early on. We thought, many of us, even in our own Declaration of Independence in Independence Hall, many delegates walked out of there thinking it'll be a lost cause, but we have to try. So that image reflected some of the thinking as the war progressed. Some of these images I had, a lot of these images came from things I did, came from other things, other books, the classics and things. And a lot of this imagery I used already had made up during the French and Indian War. I wanted us to create our own militias. So of course there were 15,000 people were signed up for militias. So I started forming regiments, and each regiment needed a regimental flag, a motto, an image, a symbol. So I already had all these things that I was just obsessed with doing. I just couldn't stop myself. And of course that was all rejected and thrown away. But then I'm glad to see it got reused again during the continental currency. I was long away from printing currency, but at that point, but my images were certainly part of it. Okay, I think if there's nothing else, we'll bid farewell, and I hope to see you all in another venue and another life. All right, well done. There we are.
All right. Then as we're wrapping this one up, just a reminder, if you're watching online, the next hour will be starting at noon Central, whatever that is in your time zone, with Hatchiter Manukian talking about some of the scientific processes behind Franklin's involvement with currency. So that was the paper that Farley Grubb plugged at the end of his talk. So hope you'll stick around for that one, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you.